Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Hello, good morning and a very warm welcome to Newsline, live from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And joining me this morning is Dr. Asanga Velikara from the Center for Policy Alternatives. Good morning.
Good morning for us. Thank you.
Thank you for getting up early and getting here on time. Very nice of you. And how is Dr. Sarah?
He's well, and he sends you his regards.
Wonderful chap he is.
I'm sure he is, yes, absolutely.
And he must be very glad that he hasn't been turfed out of bed.
No, I think he's glad to have others do it once in a while as well.
Indeed, indeed. Asanga, tell me, why a constitutional assembly? When it consists of the whole of the parliament?
The whole of parliament. The Constitutional Assembly met for the first time last Tuesday.
Right.
It's the first time the Parliament resolved earlier in the year to function both as Parliament for ordinary purposes, but also as a Constitutional Assembly,
right,
in order to draft a new constitution.
Right.
The purpose of sitting in these two separate capacities is very largely symbolic.
Okay.
It is to signify that we are in the business of drafting our third Republican constitution.
Right.
That Parliament will therefore function and behave slightly differently from the way that it normally does.
Right.
That it is supposed to be a deliberative, more consensus-based discussion.
Okay.
So that we, unlike the previous two constitutions that we have drafted in 1972 and 78, that we will this time hopefully have a process whereby the Constitutional Assembly can truly act in a multi-partisan national spirit, as opposed to a governing party having a huge majority doing what it wants to do.
I see. And so they'll act with a bit more responsibility.
That is certainly the hope.
Right. So the chances of them calling each other dried up old pumpkins and this, that and the other, hopefully we won't have that kind of scenario.
Yes, hopefully we won't. Of course, given the fact that these are the same people.
Yes. Wearing a different cap.
Wearing a different cap.
Yeah.
Sometimes may give rise to doubts as to whether that might actually happen, but the hope certainly is that.
Right.
And the other great thing for us, I think, is this, and that is that two things ensue when Parliament sits as the Constitutional Assembly as opposed to Parliament. First is that ordinary standing orders that apply to committee business, for example, do not apply.
Right.
So they're able to do this in public, call others into the deliberations of subcommittees and so on, and do all of those things. And the other thing is that there is hope that the Constitutional Assembly will, at least for symbolic purposes, sit outside of the Western Province, out of Colombo. Okay. Parliament can't do that, obviously. Parliament has a place. Yeah. So if the Constitutional Assembly can go out, maybe Kandy or down south or up north to Jaffna, maybe perhaps even consult people who want to talk to it, then that would be possible to do.
Right. And the little nuances are when they're seated in the parliamentary complex, the mace. Said they sit without the mace.
They will sit without the mace because the mace is the symbol of parliamentary authority. When the speaker walks into the chamber, the mace is carried in front of him by the sergeant at arms, and then that is placed there, which means that then Parliament is in session.
Right.
And the Constitutional Assembly not being Parliament, the mace will certainly not be there, and possibly the Speaker who is also the President or the Chairman of the Constitutional Assembly, will sit without his usual regalia and wig and all.
Oh, I see. So it'll be just Karu.
It will be just Mr. Jasuri.
Right, okay.
Chairman Jasuri.
Chairman Jasuri instead of Speaker. Okay, so that's explained the Constitutional Assembly. But Asanga, why do we need a new constitution?
I was hoping that you might ask this question. Yes, we do need a new constitution. That's absolutely clear to me. and I would like to discuss with you why I think that.
Yeah.
We need a whole series of reforms to re-democratize.
Right.
We did some significant things last year in the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. I think there was a huge national consensus towards the end of President Rajapaksa's term that the 18th Amendment, which he enacted in 2010, was a huge mistake, that the centralization of power in a single individual and a single office like the executive president is a very bad idea.
Yeah.
And I think the coalition that built up around the common candidate, Mr. Sirisena, in the presidential elections last year was all about good governance, Yahapalane, all of that. So the 19th Amendment therefore affected, I think, some very significant changes. It cut down the powers of the presidency to a much more reasonable level. But there is also a number of other reasons why we should go further down that path. We need a new Bill of Rights. We need further entrenchments of the independent judiciary. We need a new electoral system. We need all of these things. We need to strengthen Parliament even further. And finally, and of course most importantly, the most vexed problem that we have been unable to solve throughout our period as an independent country is the issue of power sharing and devolution. So that ours has been since time immemorial a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious country, a plural society. We have never been able to constitutionally reflect that. What we have done is to always privilege the identity and the claims of the majority. And we are not saying that their primacy must be destroyed. Of course not. They have had a very long historic presence in this island, a great civilization and history. Those things must be preserved. But to me, certainly, that must never come at the cost of the dignity and the rights of the minorities who are also Sri Lankans. And those claims must be met. So there are... And those are different claims, no? I mean, the Tamils...
On that score, what do you think can be achieved in terms of putting it into writing, the rights of the minorities? What? That's
right. So that's, as I was just going to say, these are what you call group differentiated. What the Muslims want, or not what the Tamils want. Christians and so other minorities have different claims. So we need to look at them separately. So there is definitely a territorial dimension, devolution dimension to this, because there has been a long-standing demand in the north and east for greater devolution away from Colombo to them, so that they can exercise a measure of autonomy or self-government in the north and east. So that's one dimension. That doesn't, however, solve the problems of dispersed minorities. The Muslims are a great case in point. Devolving power territorially to the east may solve the problems of the substantial Muslim population in the east. But there are also others elsewhere, scattered around the country. We need to ensure that the kinds of thing that happened in the recent past, where vigilante Buddhist monks, for example, could take it upon themselves to target Muslim businesses and individuals, go on the rampage, and do so with great impunity. Those are the kinds of things that we need to ensure will never happen again in this country.
So, two questions spring to mind. One is that is this a form of federalism kind of thing?
Well, it's like this. I mean, I think we always get into this debate about is it unitary or is it federal. With great respect, I mean, there's a value to be had in and having that debate. But nonetheless, I think we are overemphasizing the significance of these labels, and we always do that. For decades, we have done that. If you look at constitution-making practice across the world, we see that those old-fashioned labels have been sort of, almost relegated to insignificance now. What matters is what works. And what are the needs that we have in this country? There's clearly a need for some sort of multi-level government. And let me tell you also one thing. There is an assumption that devolution is only asked by the Tamils of the Northeast. That is not true. Consistently, I have found, and I have worked on this now for well over 10 years, if you speak to provincial chief ministers, even in the singular majority areas in the south, they have a very good understanding of the idea of devolution,
Right.
and that we need to strengthen it further. That it brings government closer to the people, it deconcentrates and decentralizes power. All these things, promote both democracy as well as development and other more responsive government.
But in India, with their system, it appears to me, from just sort of looking in, that India is so divided. Each state is like different.
Sure, I mean, but here's the other point. Can you imagine such a bewilderingly plural and populous country surviving for 50 years as a united state? I think that is the miracle that we have to look at. I mean, any other part of the world, this is a country that was imminently going to break up.
Right.
And possibly in massive bloodshed and violence. I mean, I'm not saying that in the Indian experience it is perfect. It is far from that. But nonetheless, that great idea that they had when they made their great constitution after independence, the idea of unity in diversity.
Right.
And I think that's a very good point. We have a much more manageable country here. It is a both more prosperous, more educated country and smaller one. So,
but do you think, Hasanga, that our politicians acting or with their new other cap on, as in the Constitutional Assembly, do you think that they're going to get much luck in selling this idea of
unity and diversity?
Yes, well, because if you look at it from the viewpoint of the majority, they'll say, hang on, we've all lived together so far. Why do you now need to actually come? Aren't you trying to it's just rata bedano business?
Oh yes, of course.
So are you trying to cut it up? Why?
Absolutely. Let me answer this in two ways. One of course, is that I would very much reject the argument that devolving power means rata bedana. That is often an argument that is made and that has to be rejected. While we are devolving power, we will always ensure that the integrity of the country and the unity of Sri Lanka is always protected, both constitutionally and legally, as well as will provide structurally for ways in which any kind of secessionist movement will not be tolerated. No one is there anymore. We must give great credit to the Tamil National Alliance, TNA, the leader of the opposition, people like Mr. Sambandhan and Sumandiran. They keep saying that they are more than willing to give an undertaking in perpetuity, put it in the constitution.
Right.
This is an indissoluble, indivisible, united, single state. There is no question of asking for separate state. So we can work around those things. That said, though, I think this is what you're also getting at. There is that fear within the majority that, particularly in the northeast, they are not pulling together. That there is a tendency to go their separate way if you provide.
Yes, because the feeling. I was having this. We debated this. I did with some people from deep down in that little fishing village, Tangol, famous for other things too.
As well, indeed, yes.
Anyway, they were mainly young, youth in their late 20s. They were completely perplexed, and they said, what they, as in what they meant is the people of the northeast. He said what they're trying to do is, now that they've lost the war, they are trying to get a consolation prize.
Right.
And the consolation prize is that they've commandeered all this global opinion to support them. And it's almost as though this is some sinister ploy to forget the probes.
Right.
And in exchange for that, is that too cynical and too far-fetched?
I think it is too cynical. Although this has been a strain of Sinhalese thinking for a very long time.
Yeah.
I think it is far too cynical and far too intolerant, far too and lacks an understanding as to why we are having this discussion.
Yeah.
Devolving power away from Colombo to the southern province or to Uva is going to help.
Right.
Exactly people like that,
right?
Who on other grounds would oppose it for when Tamils ask for it.
Yeah.
There's no point in building a culvert from somewhere in the bureaucrat's office in Colombo when you can do that there.
That's
that's the point that we must make. There are things, of course, that only the central government can do. There has to be, we have to do so many other things with regard to development that only that can do. But other things can be devolved.
Right.
Here's the other point. I think in relation to your friends from Tangol, that this notion that there is this massive international conspiracy to get the Sinhalese, this idea of the siege mentality, this idea that we are encircled. I think we must now come out of that.
Right.
50 years after independence. I mean, last year we demonstrated that a hugely popular president who won a war and won an election in 2010 was rejected by the entire people of this country because of his record after that, to do with authoritarianism and corruption and all of that kind of thing. We are showing signs of great democratic and political maturity. And I think it is the task of the Constitutional Assembly as much as everybody else to take us in that direction so that we become a more plural and modern country rather than one that is shackled by the fears and the hatreds of the past.
A regular viewer, and thank you for sending this in. What is the TNA doing? Have you heard them speaking about the hardships of the people and how they can be resolved? All they want is more political power and not economic empowerment to the people. This way they keep their people oppressed and suppressed to achieve their political objectives. The Northern Provincial Council has adequate funds, but what do they do? Perhaps you should do a program, the role of the TNA in economic empowerment of the Northern people.
Reasonable point. I have certainly heard TNA members talking constantly about these things, not only about the people, particularly after Mr. Sambandhan became the leader of the opposition. He has taken a lot of matters up that have nothing whatsoever to do with his own constituency, but everything to do with the rest of the country as well. So to that extent, I think there is it's unfair to criticize overly the TNA as being only interested about grabbing more power for themselves. I think that is unfair. Having said, here's the fair element of that question, though. The Northern Provincial Council. We have a chief minister there who is, in my view, certainly far more interested in grandstanding and attracting attention to himself than actually doing the job for which he was elected to do. And now, those days you could complain that there was a defense minister which was very powerful, there was a military governor, there was this, there was that. You couldn't actually do your job because you were here. After January 2015, when an eminently reasonable person like Mr. Palihakkar or Reginald Kure are the governors, that argument does not hold. We know very well, as your viewer points out, that there are funds, there are problems. Every province has those problems, not only them. Right? We have problems with our bureaucracy and how it works and delays and dilatoriness. But nonetheless, we can see, I think that's a fair assessment, that there is that element where the chief minister is more interested. There were other chief ministers point out, for example, that after years when they have had a chief ministers conference to discuss the problems of the provincial council so that they can take it up with him, he doesn't turn up.
Let's take a quick commercial break and do stay tuned. We'll be right back.
First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Welcome back to Newsline and good morning to you. Asanga, we were discussing the problems of the non-performance of the Northern Provincial Council. So when they behave as they do, led unfortunately by Mr. Vigneswaran and also the TNA, it doesn't augur well. It only fuels the fears that is prevalent in the South.
Unfortunately so, yes.
That's the bottom line.
Is it though? Because aren't there other ways of doing these things? The point I think that we have to do is to separate out the behavior, or particularly the more the aspects of the behavior of the Chief Minister that can be criticized, from the longer standing constitutional issue that we are trying to deal with. This is a demand that the Tamil people of this country have made from the point of independence onwards. They have not always been separatist. They have not always been violent. It has, however, been the great desire of a great many moderate Tamil people to allow them that. And I think it is only fair that we should do that.
Right.
It is unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate. I think Chief Minister Vigneswaran can behave in far more constructive ways. Demonstrate how, by working the system of the 13th Amendment, demonstrate those areas in which we need to further strengthen devolution, those matters that we need to adjust so that, provincial councils can function far better. If he had done this, certainly since January 2015, when there's absolutely no excuse for exercising those powers, we will find that many of these skeptics can be persuaded.
But I have another viewer who says, what are the issues that are faced by the northern people currently? Land, police powers, financial powers, etc., etc. But how are the northern people deprived in this context in comparison to the rest of the country?
Well, you see, this is the thing. I think the rest of the country also demands a fair degree of devolution. I think it is not merely that. But here what we're talking about is not merely the nitty-gritty, the details, the mechanics, the machinery of devolution only.
Right.
We must remember that this point comes from the self-perception of the Tamils as a founding people of this country as well.
Right.
They may be numerically a minority, but they have always felt that they have, in this country, and certainly in the Northeast, a history as long as that of the Sinhalese, and they require that sense of dignity and identity to be reflected. Now, they may not be able to get all that they want, and in many countries like ours, you don't. Take the United Kingdom, for example, for us, one country that you are and I are both familiar with very much. The smaller nations, Wales and Scotland, or Northern Ireland, are nowhere near as prominent within the arrangements, the governing arrangements of the United Kingdom as the massive component of it, which is England. And likewise, those de facto realities are going to be there even in a Sri Lankan situation. But in the UK context, what you do is that you give those minorities you don't humiliate them. You don't oppress them. You do go as far as possible and in good faith to give them the constitutional recognition that they would like.
Right.
And that is, I think, where we must be going to as well.
But it promises apparently to be a pretty hard, tough sell.
In the South?
Yes.
Let's see what the Public Representation Commission says. We have had surveys constantly. I mean, if you look at some of the media, if you look at some of the commentators, this idea that the Sinhalese are congenitally opposed to power sharing and devolution, I think can be questioned very seriously.
We, this network did a, let's say, it's called Gammadda, door-to-door campaign, where we went to the rural areas. We also went to the former conflict areas. Do you know, Asanga, I'll tell you this. Those people, the rural people, right, not only in the north now, they didn't give tuppence about all this business.
Right.
What they wanted was for their roads to be sorted, for their paddy to be sold. The human-elephant conflict to be resolved.
Absolutely.
Water, electricity. In short, for an opportunity to live this life, right? Which is what everybody wants.
Absolutely. I mean,
but the people in the north. When I went there, and I asked him, you know, how much does this? Said, look at my children. She said, do you know how old what my son is? And I looked, I said, about 10. She said, no, 16. You know, stunted growth, all these issues. They have to walk 6 kilometers a day to get to school and so on. So I don't think they can see this big change that may come about if all these wonderful things are achieved.
I mean, I don't find that surprising at all. I mean, hardly in any country do you find people, when you ask them what their day-to-day issues are, saying, I want constitutional reform, I want devolution, I want something else. But all of those issues that they have raised that you mentioned, and quite rightly to go and talk to them, are issues of governance. It's about good government, it's about efficient government, it's about development, it's about all of those things. What we're trying to get right here is the framework of government that we are going to have in this country that can deliver us the prosperity, all of those, so that it's not only the western province but elsewhere as well we can have that development, but that doesn't come at the cost of democracy and rights. It doesn't we don't equate authoritarianism with rapid development. What we're trying to get is the system of government, and it is not surprising at all to me that ordinary people don't talk about those issues in exactly those terms. They wouldn't use that language, they wouldn't do that. But what they're talking about are the very stuff and substance of what I'm concerned about as well.
Indeed. Dr. Asanga Welika, thank you very much for having joined us.
Thank you very much for us. It's a great pleasure.
And on a quick note, there's some consternation that the security arrangements for the former president and his brother have been withdrawn. Well, it's only the army that have been withdrawn, because apparently in peace times there is no provision for the army to supply bodyguards of this nature. So MR and GR will be getting special task force in 2 lots, 50 the first time around and another 50 thereafter, of the elite police force, which is the SDF. On that note, thank you for having watched Newsline. I wish you a great day ahead, and happy holiday season 2. In the meantime, take care and God bless.
Newsfirst, Newsline.